You're tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
In any event, it is Monday, and what we do every Monday is we check in with our good friend, Kris Sims, who is the Alberta Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Kris, good to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I mean, the carbon tax, you and I have called it tongue-in-cheek, the gift that keeps on giving, because it just keeps on giving content. But evidently, our content has been working because the Liberals are trying to give it a little refresh, a little rebrand. They're trying to put lipstick on a pig here. What on earth is happening?
It's pretty funny, and your term has been used a lot in politics, and what I love about this is that it's been used a lot with the carbon tax. In fact, it was former provincial NDP leader in British Columbia, Carol James, who called the notion of a revenue-neutral carbon tax lipstick on a pig. This is way back in the olden days, Andrew, when the NDP didn't like the carbon tax. I'm old enough to remember that. So it's really funny to see this phrase coming back to bite them, because that's exactly what they're trying to do. This is how it goes, okay? So Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government has this big, honking, ugly carbon tax, and he's quadrupling the thing within the next 7 years or so. We peasants, though, Andrew, are too stupid to understand just how wonderful and beneficial this carbon levy is. And so in their magnanimity, the Trudeau government has now decided to go back to their little whiteboard and figure out a way to rebrand the carbon tax, and especially its heavenly rebates. So they're going to try to figure out a way to try to bamboozle people. I don't know what they're going to call the rebate now, like super Stardust fancy rebate something, double plus good, who knows? So all this is to say they're going to be spending taxpayers' money, probably talking to a bunch of consultants and lobbyists to put their heads together how to resell the carbon tax and the rebates to Canadians. When the facts are, the math speaks for itself. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has figured out that the average Canadian family, especially here in Alberta, will be out more than $900 this year in 2024 with the rebates factored in. That's net because of the carbon tax. So people aren't dumb. They know that this is emptying their wallets. They know that this is basically a tax on everything, but the Trudeau government is undeterred. They're going to try to polish this one.
Yeah, and look, I mean, sales, marketing, advertising, communications, all of these have a place. They're all valuable. But the one thing you should always do as a bit of an introspection activity whenever you are thinking you need a rebrand is wonder whether people are aware of the policy and dislike it on its merits. And that's the thing here. I mean, it's one area to say, okay, well, people don't really understand this, so we're going to, sell it to them so that they understand it. In this case, the reason people don't like it is because they understand it, because they see how much it's costing them. So in that case, any rebrand is just going to be lying.
Yeah, exactly. The call is coming from inside the house, folks. This is the problem. And it's one of these things where you see, no matter which government is in power, which party is in power, quite often if they stay in government this long, they can just really become ensconced in their bubble. They become tone deaf. They stop listening to what us average worker drones are doing and saying, and they start believing their own spin. And this is exactly what's happening in Ottawa with this idea of, oh, well, we just need to explain it to these dum-dums better, and then they will love us all again. It reminds me of that meme that they use for Principal Skinner all the time from The Simpsons. It's like, am I wrong? No, definitely it's the children. That's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this other thing. I hadn't heard of this until you brought it up. Something called a wing night mutiny. Now, I love wings. Yeah. I don't love mutiny as much, but if there are enough wings, I can tolerate the mutiny. What's the wing night mutiny?
Yeah, I'm just, full disclosure, a huge fan of chicken wings myself. If you ever go to a restaurant with me, you'll wind up with like this goblin pile of bones in front of you, right? So I think this is important. So this is funny. The city of Calgary, following suit with the city of Edmonton, which is much more docile, except for their hockey team. The city of Edmonton took this lying down a few months ago, but the city of Calgary, boy, they're not taking this. What this is there's now a 15-cent mandatory tax per paper bag. There's $1 mandatory municipal tax per reusable bag. Those ones that fill up all of our under sink cabinets and in our trunks. the idea of plastic single-use bags, like that's right out, right? Because Prime Minister Trudeau banned those things. But here in Calgary, it wasn't just the bags. They actually put forward this new law and enforced it, saying you now must beg/plead for a napkin when you're at a restaurant, or a wooden fork. Please, Mayor Gondek, may I have a fork or utensil to eat my meal? So it's redonkulous because this local government, like, we're going to save the world by making people ask for napkins. And so Premier Danielle Smith had a really funny line. She said, yeah, this almost calls a wing night mutiny. So we're picturing people just revolting in pubs across Canada and like flinging their chicken wings at people. I don't know if that happened. I have not yet heard reports, but wing night mutiny became a thing. And that actually helped energize local politicians, some of the city councillors on Calgary City Hall. It kind of gave them the courage to speak up and to say, you know what, this is stupid. We shouldn't have a 15-cent bag tax. It's going to be 25 cents next year. And we shouldn't be nuisancing people to death on things like forks and napkins. For goodness sake, stick to your knitting, City Hall. So this really gave city councillors around Calgary City Hall table the courage to speak up and to say, you know what, we shouldn't be nickel and diming people to death with nuisance taxes, like dumb things like these bag taxes. And we certainly shouldn't, as mayor, be telling people whether or not they can have napkins. Like, that's so dumb. And so what's really interesting here is that now this could cascade into Edmonton. The folks of Edmonton might now find their voice because the people of Calgary have spoken up. But it's not over yet. In Calgary, they still need to email their councillors. They still need to phone the mayor's office.
See, stuff like this, though, is infuriating for not just because I too like chicken wings, but because it's the kind of thing that people pretend is little. And people pretend it's small. They say, oh, what's the big deal? They still have napkins. You just have to ask for them. But it really speaks to an attitude issue here, because when government is regulating things so small and so seemingly insignificant, it's licensing government to regulate the big things, to regulate the giant things. And at a certain point, it's going to be where literally, this would not be far off to believe, where governments mandate cloth napkins. Where governments mandate cloth napkins, and all of a sudden your crappy hole-in-the-wall diner has to have linen like it's a Michelin star restaurant or whatever, because that's what the government has decreed. And that's, I think, the problem here, is that when you license government to encroach on something like this, you're giving it a power that will only expand and balloon, just like the carbon tax has increased and ballooned.
Yes, exactly. The carbon tax started at, it's only $10 per ton. Well, it's going to be $170 per ton pretty soon, folks. It used to cost you about 50 cents in the carbon tax. Pretty soon, it's going to be costing you $20 every single time you fill up with the carbon tax. And you really nailed it here, Andrew, because we can even give you an example of how quickly this can escalate. So in Vancouver, the city of Vancouver, they still have their bag tax, yes, but they did have to climb down on this weird cup tax. I don't know if you heard about this, but I was living next to Vancouver when this all happened, so it was pretty crazy. So the city of Vancouver, along with their bag fee, also imposed this weird cup tax, so that every single time you went to a coffee shop or a gas station or some mom and pop corner store, and you dared use a disposable paper cup, they were charging you an extra 25 cents. Where did that quarter go? It didn't go to the city. So where was it going? I phoned them and asked them. This was the plan. They wanted to force all of these stores to collect these quarters, save them all up, because in the very near future, the city of Vancouver was going to ban all disposable or single-use cups. Every single one of them would not be allowed within the city limits. How are we to drink coffee, you ask? They actually wanted to force Vancouverites to share a communal pool of cups. I'm not kidding. And the money that these businesses were being forced to collect was supposed to go to a dishwasher, so that now these businesses would be responsible for washing everybody's cup that has been, in their backpack on SkyTrain for a week or under their truck seat or whatever. Yeah. Just imagine hundreds of thousands of people being forced, adults to share this group of cups. It was so weird that they actually had to back down. But again, this is what happens when you give them that inch.
Yeah, no, very well said. It'd be like the Stanley Cup craze in the, I think it's mostly in the US now. Those like, I don't even get the Stanley Cup craze. It's not even a hockey thing. It's like there's some like weird, like reusable cup that everyone is like going crazy over. And it's like, it's just a reusable mug. So I don't know. Stanley, actually there's a Stanley Park in BC, isn't there? It's the Stanley Park Cups, we'll say.
Yes, I would like to think that, or I'd like to think it's a hockey thing. But what's really funny is that in actual fact, like Stanley, the company's been around forever. It's like thermos, right? It's almost become synonymous with something that keeps your coffee hot. And like working men at like construction sites have had these things in their trucks forever. But for some reason, these big pink ones took off. And I don't know. Some pretty.
You know what? The Liberal government should hire the Stanley marketing team to do their carbon tax rebrand. Because clearly they've managed to do something pretty good on their own rebrand over at Stanley.
It looks like a shade of lipstick. You know, that would
Yeah, there you go. All right. Kris Sims, we will talk to you next Monday. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.